Right, who wants to bet that the acoustics are going to slam me again? I'm going to be on the floor by the end, watch. So, what a day. I've got to say that some really, really key themes came out. Some really different themes from yesterday, which is great. So my top 10 for today. Number 1, if I can get this to work, there we go, is relationships. It's all about relationships. It's like a marriage. Hopefully this isn't what you're going to be doing with your franchise partners or investor partners at some point in the future. But I do think that it's really important that you really get to know each other regardless of how you're going into business, right? I think that we all know that to begin with, there's a honeymoon period in any relationship. You've got to make sure that you're absolutely on the ball in asking all the right questions and giving yourself the time to build those relationships. You've got to make sure that you align in values. I think we also are told a lot today that it's about management skill and it's the strength of the management team that people are really, really buying into, as well as the concept. We heard that just here. We had some superb entrepreneurs on the stage, and I think that they're all going to go on and do amazing things. I think we've got to be careful, of course, though, that it's very easy to be wrapped up in high valuations, right? I think we all like to think that what we do and the brands we create are worth millions. We're not a tech business. Then there is a capital-intensive element to what we do in the restaurant sector. I think the idea, when we were told it this morning, and someone followed up this afternoon with a very similar sentiment, that we should run a business like you want to keep it. Clever investors will know that. I think that whilst you know that investors particularly are looking for an exit, it's important to make sure you run it for the everyday and ultimately for your customers. The second one for me is around simplicity. We heard this over and over again today, is that it's about simplicity. As supposedly Leonardo da Vinci said, I don't know, I just found this on the internet earlier on, but as long as you put someone's name at the bottom, they've said it, it's a quote. Consistency, simplicity is ultimate sophistication. I think what we've seen actually is, over time, the absolute best concepts are the ones that really, really do deliver on that simplicity. People need to be obsessed with their product. If it's one thing that drives me nuts, it's that we actually put food so far down the agenda in hospitality and in running restaurants. And I get there's lots of other things that are really important, but the product has to be right. One of the things I think that I really love every year at GRIF is this particular session we just saw. People come in here with passion for their product, right? Passion with food. If that's who you are as an entrepreneur, hold on to it. Take all the advice from around you, and make sure, you've got to operate a business. And as I said, you've got to make money. We're here to make money, right? But make sure that you put your product at the center of what you do. And make sure, but be aware that taste is not enough. It has to work for the market. You've got to know your competitive edge. And you've got to know what makes you famous. Absolutely drive down to that absolute core. I think the better presentations up here today were the ones where people absolutely know what it is they're offering. The next piece for me is around diligence. I think it's too easy for entrepreneurs to think that being entrepreneurial can mean they can be reckless. As an entrepreneur, whether it's your own money or other people's money, maybe a credit line from your suppliers, you have a responsibility to make sure that your business is running effectively. Make sure you do your homework. Listen to the teams who you employ. Listen to those people who live around you. Don't let your ego overtake, right? And I think that it's a really important one. I think we can see that very quickly people get a little success and suddenly they think they're right at the top of the game. Take advice and make sure that you go slow. We heard this morning that, London or Manhattan might seem like the glitz and glam of where you want your restaurant, but they're very hard markets. And make sure that you keep a sense of curiosity. Don't stick your head too far in your business that you're not looking out, but make sure you concentrate and keep your head down. The next one's around testing. Getting it right, making sure what you do works. And I've got to say, I know that we had a lot of people up here saying, my friends have told me it's great. Come on, if your friends are any kind of friend, they're going to tell you it's great. Your mum's definitely going to tell you it's great, right? So make sure you go out and test what it is you do with customers and ask for their true feedback. Get someone else to ask your customers. Don't ask them yourself because you're only going to get one answer. Rarely is speed truly a competitive advantage. Everyone says this as an entrepreneur. If I don't get there, someone else will. And you go, actually, it's better to take the long game and get there eventually, but taking the right path and making sure it's sustainable and that it's effective. The next piece for me, which came through obviously thick and fast, and Raymond today really, really drove this home, this idea of, scarcity and efficiency. We do have scarcity when it comes to our teams, the resources, food. We fundamentally got one planet, right? I think that we need to be using technology. We heard this over and over today. We need to use technology, we need to use experts, and we need to do what's right. We're going to make money, but let's make sure that we're not killing the planet on our way. Do what's best for your team. Utilize the team around you. And this isn't just about small players. I mean, they're saying that McDonald's won the Sustainability Award. A big player, you can make massive difference by making small changes. If you're sitting there thinking, actually, do you know what? We know that what we're doing is not sustainable. Go back and look at how you can build this within your business. Being luxury is not an excuse. I mean, I think that Raymond really, really pushes that himself and really highlights that there's actually probably a greater opportunity to do better good in the luxury space. Think for the future. Think about recycling, food waste, all of those things. I think one thing that is really, really great to see is that clearly plant-based, for anyone that's watched the last hour, is definitely the way forward. I did think, though, that a lot of those concepts had a lot of meat on the bone. Ba-boom. Do wonder whether any of the guys are going to take a stake in them. Ba-boom. It's getting late, right? And then the next one is around experts, valuing expertise. We kept hearing today about people taking mentorship and turning to other people. One thing that our sector is amazing for is we are open. We're willing to share, and actually sometimes to a point where maybe it's a bit too much, but we share. Look at those people, that's you, right? All of you guys are absolutely experts in what you do. You may not think it every day, but you are. You've got a lot to, you really are. You've got a lot to offer. And one thing I would say is I've taken great joy and pride in the last couple of years of investing and mentoring some really, really great up-and-coming operators. Make sure you go and pass it down. If you're someone that's sitting there that has the ability to share your expertise, do it. But also turn to professionals, turn to people who are there. Make sure you're seeing the lawyers, bring in the right consultants at the right time, and then hire the right talent at the right times. I think the other thing for me is that ideas aren't exclusive, right? It's absolutely to a point where everyone in your team and everyone around you should be able to come up with the ideas. But my advice to you is once you've created the ideas and agreed on the ideas, then make sure someone owns it and you deliver on that idea. It's about execution. We're really data rich. We know that we're getting all this information all the time, but Mikkel, my business partner, uses it all the time and says data rich, information poor. It's drip, one to remember. Just because you've got the data, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing the right thing with it, right? The next up for me is around investing in your people. We heard yesterday, it's the only one that's, for me, that stood out on both days that I wanted to overlap. It's about creating an experience your customers love, but ultimately your team have got to love it too. If it's one thing that I think you learn when you read Danny Meyer's book, it's that you put your team first and they will deliver for you to your customers. We spend a lot on marketing design and interiors. My question to you is, how much are you spending on marketing, design, interiors for all of the back of house areas in your team? We create these beautiful brochures, we create these beautiful websites, but are we giving the same courtesy to the people that actually commit to our businesses? There's a real opportunity there. I really loved the story earlier about the teddy bear and about going the extra mile and the little photographs around the town and sharing it. I mean, a really beautiful story, but what it shows to me is that wasn't a standard. Standards are one thing, right? Having all of those brand standards in a book, it's the entry point, it's the minimum. If you've got engaged team members, they're going to go absolutely out of their way to put your customers first, for that customer centricity. I think we also know that there's changing models. I mean, I put this up here. This is a dark kitchen in London, and you kind of think, do I really think this is the future? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. We heard that actually, is delivery even sustainable right now? There's a lot of question marks as to whether some of these big players are profitable at all on the base level of how they're working. What I would suggest, and we've dealt with this personally with one investment, is actually over winter with the increased demand in delivery, it made a business of ours that was very profitable, unprofitable. Be really careful and make sure you're constantly looking at what you're doing and thinking, whilst we're thinking about the changing models. Be diligent, as I said, take care and make sure you work all the numbers through. I think there's a growing trend towards portfolio working, multi-brands. It spreads the risk, and it means that in terms of scaling, it helps you to ensure that there's a blend. One thing we've definitely seen in the UK over time, with the last struggles of casual dining, is those people that were doing a better blend of food and wet were actually really leading the market. I mean, you look at New World Trading Company, The Alchemist, Drake and Morgan. These are brands that are absolutely leading that space. So think about different portfolios. I do think there's an opportunity for cookie cutter. I think it's going to be less in experience. It's going to be more in that food for fuel. It's going to be more in fast food and fast casual. But it's also about tailoring those concepts when you put them places, even at the point where it's a cookie cutter concept. This is a rollout scalable brand. Let's try and add a sense of individuality. If I personally had to put money why I think there's a casual dining crash in the UK, I think there's two things. One is saturation driven by property. The second one is that we lost sight of what's important. Actually, what happened is people moved from wanting individuality to consistency, because ultimately, if you're spending money, that money is really important to you. You have to remember that. Often, we're in a position where we're very much more fortunate than those people that are coming to our restaurants and our outlets. They are wanting to make sure that they get a consistent experience that's going to make them happy. And I think consistently okay or consistently good is better than inconsistently excellent. What's happened, though, is that through time, we've opened the gates, and the independents, and we've seen this in the UK, and small brands have gone, well, actually, we know we can do individuality and consistency, and we're really going to up our game. So there's a whole load of independent operators there, and particularly the pub sector in the UK, that's come through and really, really ruling. And I think that it's incredible. So there has to be a learning from that, and that's about individuality. I also think you've got to be careful that everyone talked about franchising. Yeah, it's an easy route to growth, but we also know that it's not the only way, and we also know that it's risky. That said, I also really, really believe that there may be a changing model here. We may be moving closer to a hotel-type model, and this will be increasingly the case, the triangle of brand, operator, and property. And I think increasingly we're going to see this coming to fruition. In terms of growth, I really loved, I think two people said it on stage today, that growth lifts everything, and it does. I worked in boom businesses for the last 4 or 5 years, and everybody feels a buzz. I have an opportunity because we're growing, and you've got to innovate as you go. I think you look at big players like Wagamama, and they've really innovated and continued innovating. We're going to watch this space to see what happens under their new ownership, but it's been a real beacon for the last few years. Take the time to make the right decisions, and let's make sure, again, that we're not reckless. But also, if you don't grow, make sure you communicate to your team. It's one thing that I watch over and over again is that leadership teams take themselves away from the team. They're too busy with investors, they're too busy with banks, and they're too busy with everything else trying to cover because you're in decline. If you're in decline, the most important thing you can do is be on the floor and be with your teams and keep those teams energized and engaged. I've watched it, we've helped people, and it makes a difference. I think on that point, my last one is that mistakes are a part of every growth journey. I've had a whole load of ups and downs. I've had a whole load of failures. And do you know what? I'm super proud of my failures. I think everybody has to remember this. You've got to be thick-skinned. You've got to avoid distractions. Don't get too bogged down with your investors and the banks and everybody else. Give yourself headspace. Make sure to take time away. We've heard lots of people talk about 100-hour weeks and the rest of it. And do you know what? That struggle is not what makes success. What makes success is working with your team and working really hard and effectively. And 100 hours a week is not an effective week. Take yourself away, get inspired, pick yourself up, dust yourself down when you need to, stay relevant. And I really love the idea that actually, we're not in tech, we're not failing in front of a computer. There is a 1 a.m. washing dishes, as Victor from Big Mama said. Remember to take a step back. This is my last real point. Take a step back and celebrate your success. Love what you do because that's why you do it. I think we can get very tied up in trying to be the best we can be and try and grow. Ultimately, honestly, the reason I'm standing here, the reason that I'm sure most of you are sitting here, is that it's for passion. We love hospitality, we love what we do, and we have to take that away with us and celebrate your successes. That's my top 10 tips. Thank you so very much for listening. And I also want to take the opportunity, because no one else will, to say thank you to Jennifer, to Annie, Marla, Ali, Mina, Jean, and the team, because they do an incredible job. They do an amazing content, superb speakers, expertly produced. I'll let you do the rest of the thank yous.
Thank you so much, and thank you for staying. And I really do apologize because we've run over even by my standards in a horrific manner. So, but thank you for sticking with us, and I really appreciate all the passion and enthusiasm that everyone's brought to it over the last 3 days. So I hope you got something out of it, and I hope to see you at one of our events over the next 12 months or in Parma in 2020. So thank you so much.